What's happening, Hardwood Nation? I'm your host, Sean Knighting. The regular season is winding down, playoff seedings are out, and tournament time is fast approaching. This past week was instrumental for those seedings, and we will have all of the implications coming up on our show. So without losing any more time, let's tip it off. I'm joined with two faces you have seen all week long, our online hosts, Danny Dean and Josh Gregory. So guys, there's a lot going on, specifically in the TVC Ohio.
Sean, we're at that point that games have serious effects on the postseason. Like you said, in the Ohio, there are 4 teams fighting for that #1 spot.
Our reporters are going to spell it all out for you, so here's what's in store. Kicking off the show, we have Matt Cudahy talking NY. The girls lost big against Alexander, but keep their #1 spot in the TVC Ohio, while the boys suffered back-to-back losses. And staying with the TVC Ohio, the Alexander boys are sitting pretty with 6 straight wins. And the Lady Spartans beat a tough rival. Josh Vermillion and Maggie Shandrick will have the full rundown.
Moving over to the Hocking, the Lady Lancers found win number 4, while the guys sit at rock bottom after 2 big losses. Fed Hawk reporter Eric Threet will fill you in. Next, Eastern experts Joe Fracasso and Taylor Nimmo will share the good vibes in Eastern. The boys continue to improve, and the girls had another week full of wins.
The Athens boys had the biggest win and loss of their season, and the girls are making a turnaround. Blake Baker breaks it down for the Bulldogs, and Meigs reporters Andrew Holman and Jordan Gallagher come together with the faults of the Lady Marauders, and the boys push for the #1 spot in the Ohio.
Corbin Bagford explains how the Vinton County boys and girls remain at the #1 and 2 spots respectively in the Ohio, and Duncan Goldberg is back with your Trimble updates. Andrew Hartman and Connor Martin also have the facts on the girls' Division IV dominator. The Waterford Lady Wildcats have a chance at the state crown.
And to close out the show, we will be announcing our Hero of the Week picks. We keep that information pretty confidential, and even our host is left in the dark.
So, Sean, you'll find out at the end of the show, but who do you think this week's heroes are?
Guys, if I had to guess, I'd probably say Zakai Saltzman and Nikki Kish, but I know there were a ton of impressive performances this week.
Well, Sean, you'll just have to wait like everyone else.
Looking forward to it, guys. I'll talk to you later. The Nelsonville-York Lady Buckeyes dropped a huge game this past Thursday to the Alexander Lady Spartans. So NY reporter Matt Cudahy joins me on the desk. The Lady Buckeyes, they seem to be rolling to that division title. So what happened on Thursday?
Most of the credit has to go to the Lady Spartans, who played a fantastic game with the Richardson sisters leading the way as they combined for 43 points. But NY did not look like the same team I've been watching all season. They were sloppy on the offensive end, turning the ball over more than usual. And on defense, they were leaving way too much room on the outside, which allowed Rachel Richardson to go 4 for 5 from beyond the arc. Also, I mentioned last week on the show that Caitlin Hurd was pivotal to NY's success, and she stepped up big time, pouring in 22 points. The problem was she didn't get any help. Jessie Addis was decent as she dropped in 15 points, but she did not look like the X factor she usually is. Coach Whiteman perfectly described this loss as a huge stinger.
So how does NY's loss affect the landscape of the TVC Ohio?
Simply put, Nelsonville-York's loss has now put this division on its head. With only a couple weeks left in the season, if NY, Alexander, and the Vinton County Lady Vikings all win out, then we're looking at a 3-way tie on top of the TVC Ohio. Now, both Alexander and Vinton County have 2 TVC Ohio games left, while NY only has 1. But barring any upsets, all 3 teams should win the rest of their games. And the only thing that's guaranteed right now is that the Athens Lady Bulldogs will not win the division for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, so now looking at the NY boys, the last time we talked, they had just ended a 10-game losing streak. So things are starting to look better. Were the Buckeyes able to continue those winning ways?
Unfortunately, no. They went right back into a rut and did not look good this week, particularly in that game against Eastern. That was tough because the Eagles were definitely beatable. Everything that Coach Klein told me that this team did well in their win against Liberty Union, they struggled with in their games this week.
Harder in the second half. Our defensive intensity was much better. We dictated pace and tempo in the second half. We didn't in the first half. Plus, basically, it comes down to 9 of 26 from the free throw line. You can't win like that. They gave us up.
It was a tough week for the Buckeyes, but they still have a handful of games to possibly salvage what is kind of shaping up to be a disappointing season.
Yeah, there's still a lot to be determined out in Nelsonville. We'll make sure to watch the end of the season. Thanks, Matt. Both Alexander teams had good weeks, and they both had a common victory, the Nelsonville-York Buckeyes. So Maggie Shandrick and Josh Vermillion join me now. So guys, let's start with the girls. They lost to NY in overtime back in December. So how did they turn it around on Thursday?
Well, Sean, the Lady Spartans lost to NY 59-54 the first time around. But this week, they weren't ready to let that happen again.
Yeah, the difference this time was the play of the two stars, Jessie Addis for NY and Leah Richardson for Alexander. Addis knocked down 5 threes en route to 29 points the first time, but couldn't get her shot to fall Thursday as she shot just 3 for 7 from the free throw line. And for Richardson, she only added 4 points to her total from the first game, but the difference was her efficiency.
Richardson scored 19 points Thursday night, but what really showed was her performance from the free throw line. She was almost perfect, making 13 out of her 14 attempts. Her ability to drive the lane and draw fouls allowed many opportunities for her to get to the free throw line. And on the other end of the court, Coach McKnight really emphasized the importance of shutting down Addis. He gave that role to junior guard Nicole Hundle, also known as Punky.
Yeah, Punky was in Addis's grill all game long, and despite having 4 fouls for most of the fourth quarter, she never stopped hounding Addis. You know, she's a big reason why they won this game, but she wasn't the only one making those plays down the stretch.
Kendall Meigs and Alexis Moeller both showed up to play Thursday night. Meigs had no fear as she put up the big buckets down the stretch. And for Moeller, she was all over the court, chasing down loose balls and knocking down a three-pointer. Really clutch performances from both of them.
So a good week for the girls and also the boys. They kept their winning streak going with 2 wins this week.
Yeah, Sean, their streak is up to 6 games in a row now since falling to Athens and Chesapeake early on in January.
Seth Richardson is a big reason why the Spartans have been winning these past few weeks. Friday night against NY, all eyes were on him as he scored his 1,000th point on a pull-up jumper in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, huge milestone there for Seth. But you know, he and Mason Chapman, they get all the headlines, but the combination of Jake Weaver, Corey Chapman, Shea Grigsby, and Chase Harris in the post opens up the outside for Mason and Seth. Against NY, Weaver and Corey Chapman really stood out as they combined for 21 points and 13 rebounds. You know, Sean, I think those two are going to be the big X factors moving forward this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how these teams are going to do the rest of the year. Good stuff, guys. What's the only thing better than a Kanye West Twitter rant? The Hardwood Heroes official Twitter account @HardwoodHeroes. So give us a follow to have recaps, game updates, and polls pop up right into your feed. You can also follow my host account @Hhost_Sean. You can interact with me and the rest of the Hardwood staff throughout the week. And if we like what you send in, your tweet might be on the show and be featured as a future Tweet of the Week. We witnessed a rare occurrence this week as both Federal Hocking boys and girls picked up wins. So now I'm joined on the desk by Eric Threet, and this doesn't happen very often.
It's been a while, Sean. This is the first time since the first week of December that both the boys and girls teams won in the same week. But let's start with the Lady Lancers. The Lady Lancers are beginning to put the pieces to the puzzle. After starting 2-12 on the season, Federal Hocking has strung together 4 wins in the last 7 games. They're building momentum going into the playoffs, and it started on defense. They've been locking it up, especially on the interior. They've allowed 36 points per game over the past 7 games, which is a lot better than the 52 over the first 14. The biggest reason for this is help defense. They got each other's backs. You'll see the Lady Lancers send a trap, and Skylar Hatfield, Hannah Dunphy, or whoever the backside defender may be, they slide over and they cut off the passing lanes, which force turnovers. Turnovers add a new dimension to their offense. Fed Hoc is dangerous in transition because they have a squad full of shooters. They know it too. The only problem with this is their offense will get stagnant because everybody camps out on the outside. The Lady Lancers got to stay on the attack. If they attack the basket, the defense will collapse, and it will create space for open jumpers. This will help Federal Hocking as they go into their last conference game against the Southern Tornadoes.
So transitioning over to the boys, they beat Bern Union this week, and you've seen a common theme with this team.
They did pick up their first road win of the season, and I will break down the situation at hand in a few moments. They've posted a record of 4-13 thus far, and they have 5 games left. 4 of these 5 games come against teams with a record below 500. The Lancers will be in better shape heading into the playoffs if they can string together a few victories, but in order to handle business, they have to keep people out of the lane. Coach Justice commented on the penetration that they've dealt with.
Honestly, just looking at the penetration tonight killed us. Not using our feet. Reaching. He did a good job of getting in the hole and shot faking, and we just weren't very disciplined on defense.
Fed Hoc got to strap up on the perimeter. They have been letting opponents get too comfortable in the paint. This penetration cannot happen anymore. It leads to scrambling and excessive fouling. Out of the 7 players that played in their loss to Belpre Tuesday, 4 of them have 4 more fouls. Lancers, y'all got to show this athleticism and quickness that you've shown to have. You got to slide your feet, cut people off. Solid defensive possessions will lead to easy buckets. Look at what the Lady Lancers are doing. Y'all have the same capabilities. No more penetration.
This man is preaching out there to those Fed Hawk players, so Eric, we'll see if they can take your advice. Well, the Eastern boys have recently found their rhythm. Let's see how they did this week. So I'm joined by the dynamic duo, Eastern reporters Joe Fracasso and Taylor Nimmo. Guys, were the Eagles able to keep this momentum going?
That they did, Sean. This week was a big week for the boys as the Eagles captured their 4th win of the season on Tuesday night against Nelsonville-York. Now this win matches their total wins from the past 2 years combined.
Things have definitely been looking up for the Eagles, and Cam Richmond has proven to be a major part of the Eagles' success. Ever since he has returned, Richmond has been playing a huge role offensively. Just this week, he had 17 points against NY and 14 against Trimble.
No question about it. Cam's been crucial to their recent success, and Coach Hill and Dylan Swatzel have both made it known.
The difference is Cam Richmond. Cam Richmond had a broken collarbone from football, and he missed those first 9 games. And since he's been back, it's given us a scorer and a distributor, and that's something that we didn't have in those 9 ball games.
Definitely a deciding factor is getting Cam back, and with him back, we're definitely just starting to play better together and as a team, so just definitely helps.
Yeah, Richmond been a huge part of the turnaround, but on Friday, the momentum stopped a bit as the boys were unable to pick up a win as Trimble dominated them 68-53.
Trimble controlled the pace of the game and ran a full court press, forcing Eastern to become frantic on offense, while the defense could not stop Bryce Guthrie and the rest of the Tomcats all night. While the boys started their week off strong, the girls of Eastern did something the complete opposite. They finished their week out strong.
Yeah, Taylor, Lady Eagles started their week with the toughest competition in Jackson, and they were unable to come away with the victory as they fell at the hands of the Lady Ironmen 53-49. However, Eastern's week started to turn around a bit as the Lady Eagles rolled all over Belpre 67-34 on Wednesday.
The Lady Eagles continued their dominance with a 48-17 win over Wahama on Thursday night.
The win propelled by stifling defense, and the scoring was distributed between 9 different Eagles.
Laura Polans only had 7 of the team's total points, but she made her presence known on defense as she had 5 steals and a block on Thursday night. Despite Laura's offensive struggles on Thursday, earlier this week, Laura made major contributions in the win over Belpre and the loss against Jackson.
Now, an interesting note to look for is that ever since losing to Vinton County on December 12th, Lady Eagles, they've won 3 straight games and then lost that 4th game. Now, this trend has continued all year, and they have won 2 straight coming into the matchup on Monday at Waterford. So, if the trend continues, the Wildcats, upset alert?
Definitely going to be a game to watch, Joe. It will also be interesting to see if the boys can continue to bring the heat into next week.
That game against Waterford could be a huge upset, so we'll look to see the result of that one. Thanks, guys. Before the games are over, you can add us on Snapchat at Hardwood Heroes to see snaps from the games as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes videos from our show. You can also let us know where you will be throughout the week and which game should be featured as our Snapchat game. And you can even send us snaps of you and your friends at practices in the locker room, and your snap could be seen on our show. The big news out of the Plains this week was the unfortunate injury to guard Griffin Lutz. So Athens reporter Blake Baker is here to give us an update on that. So Blake, where does this team stand after the injury?
Sean, in the midst of perhaps their biggest win of the season, the Bulldogs suffered a massive loss. Tuesday night, Athens traveled to Vinton County and topped the conference-leading Vikings in an overtime thriller. And Griffin Lutz took control of this game from the jump. The star point guard scored at will on his way to a 27-point performance and made his defensive presence felt with a couple steals and 11 rebounds. With 20 seconds left in regulation, Lutz forced a turnover and hit a go-ahead layup, but that would be his final play of the game. Reports say he's out for the remainder of the season with a fractured bone in his foot.
Well, if you're a fan of Athens basketball, that is certainly not something that you wanted to hear.
No doubt about that, but now they're going to have to spread the production. In a loss against Wellston on Friday, they tried to get a lot of different guys involved, and that has got to be the game plan from here on out. Zakiah Saltzman finished Tuesday night's game with 24 points, so he's going to have to be a rallying point for this team. The Bulldogs showed a lot of resiliency gutting out that win on the road in overtime, and this injury came at a really unfortunate time. Athens is a young team, but they're getting a feel for the pace of the game and for playing with their leader. Lutz's biggest asset is his ability to get everyone involved, and without its catalyst on offense, Athens will have to make some big adjustments going forward.
So we've heard the big news from the boys' side, but what's going on with the Lady Bulldogs?
The girls just keep on winning. The Lady Bulldogs picked up their 4th straight win when they beat Meigs on Thursday, and Alexis McCollum had a monster week. She had 16 points in the win against Meigs and dished out 8 assists against River Valley on Tuesday. She's been a huge part of Athens' recent success.
Yeah, but the main difference in their game has been controlling the ball.
Absolutely. They're limiting turnovers and setting the pace offensively. Their biggest focus has been on making smart passes and finding the open shooter. Coach McNeil said after the River Valley game that the biggest adjustment these girls have made is that they're simply hitting their shots. Athens has scored 40-plus points in 2 games during this streak. And this is a team that finished a game with just 15 points a few weeks ago. If the ladies want to keep this streak going, they've got to remain this efficient on the offensive end.
They've certainly been able to turn it around towards the end of the season. We'll see if they can keep it up. Thanks, Blake. Still to come on this week's show, we will give you our first Waterford Lady Wildcats update of the year. Corbin Bagford will join me on the desk to break down what was a big week for the Vinton County Vikings, and Duncan Goldberg has an update on the Trimble Tomcats. And at the end of the show, Danny and Josh will rejoin us to let us know who turned in the most heroic performances of this past week. Going into the stretch run, the Meigs Marauders are just coming out of the toughest part of their season. Andrew Homan and Jordan Gallagher join me now. And guys, how did the Marauders look coming out of this past week?
It really was a tough stretch for the Marauders, Sean. They had to face the top 3 teams of the TVC Ohio, the last of which was the Lady Vikings. But they were just unable to compete in the second half against the bigger Lady Vikings, who took home a 16-point victory.
And Jordan, even worse for the Lady Marauders, those struggles from the second half carried over into the game against Athens. Thursday's game was supposed to get the Lady Marauders back on track. Meigs' December win over Athens kicked off a span where the team won 7 of 8, but this time they simply fell flat.
They were about as flat as a pop tire on the freeway, especially from the free throw line where they shot just 3 for 15.
And to put that into perspective, Jordan, Meigs had a better shooting percentage from beyond the arc. Meigs is by no means known for their shooting, but this was not a typical performance.
Luckily for the Lady Marauders, they end their regular season with a much easier stretch of 3 games.
And just like the girls and boys, they've had a tough stretch of their own. So do the Marauders have a chance at climbing back up the TVC standings?
It is going to be difficult, Sean. A lot of the teams in the top 4 teams in the TVC Ohio will revisit each other, and Coach Ed Fry is making big changes to the team's strategy to get his team on top.
So, that's what we have to do against anybody. You get fouled. Gets the other team in foul trouble. You have a chance to reset your defense, anything you want. So many things if you just attack the basket.
This team has a lot of shooters, but expect guys like Caleb Sheets and Colton Lilly to attack the paint more and open up room outside for Luke Musser.
After that tough loss to Vinton, Coach Fry essentially told Sheets to get his game on and go play. He asked Sheets to use his ball handling ability to find teammates, and Sheets, he responded, attacking the basket against Wellston and hitting open teammates for 9 assists.
With the change, teams need to watch out for Musser. He had his best game of the season against Wellston, putting up 28 points and going 7 for 10 from deep.
If the boys can continue to play smart basketball where they look to drive and kick, then they could reach the top of the conference once again.
Those changes will certainly be tested this week against Alexander. Great work, guys. Coming off a 19-point win over Meigs last week, the Vinton County Vikings had a 2-game lead atop the TVC Ohio, but they were tasked with hosting Athens Tuesday night, and the result was one of the most thrilling games of the season. Vinton County reporter Corbin Bagford here, and you're going to fill us in on how the Vikings fell in overtime.
Sean, both fans of both teams were in for a treat on Tuesday night, but Athens ended up handing the Vikings their first conference loss of the season. Vinton County started off slow, but Derek Jones almost single-handedly kept the Vikings in the game. Jones is a 4-year member of varsity and has displayed ability to lead the team and step up when the Vikings need him. And actually, Vinton County probably should have won this game. They were squeezing the orange, running some time off the clock. Late in the game, up 1 when Griffin Lutz stole the ball from Tristan Bartow to give Athens a 1-point lead. After an Athens free throw, though, Bartow made up for his mistake and sent it into overtime with that layup. But late in OT, it was a defensive breakdown that hurt the Vikings. You can see the beginning of that play, 2 Vikings defenders fell over. Athens exploited it with great ball movement, found Logan Maxfield for the game winner, and Nayland Yates on the ensuing possession got the ball stolen from him to give the Vikings their first conference loss in the TVC Ohio.
Yeah, so thanks to the snow, the Lady Vikings, they had a bye week this last week, and they came out a bit rusty on Monday.
Yeah, the Lady Vikings also had a slow start, but they countered that with an overpowering second half, thanks in no small part to Jalen Hale. She was on fire from beyond the arc and a rejection hotline on defense as usual. Her 24 points and 15 rebounds led the Vikings to a 52-36 victory over Meigs. They actually fell on Wednesday to non-conference opponent Minford by 13. Hale scored 18 in that one, but they righted the ship on Thursday with a commanding 63-19 win over Wellston. And more good news for Hale this week. She actually signed on Wednesday to commit and play collegiately at Rio Grande. So congratulations to her and her family. And as for the Lady Vikings, they need to win out to get that TVC title, but Rod Bentley's still hoping for it.
Yeah, it's definitely crowded at the top of that TVC Ohio. Only one team will win. It might be the Vikings. Thanks, Corbin. Here at Hardwood Heroes, we are all about giving you on-demand coverage of everything Tri-Valley Conference basketball. The only place to go for nightly recaps, individual show segments, and full show replays is our YouTube page, WOUB PBS. Here you will find videos, all of those videos and more, anytime, anywhere. This year, Hardwood Heroes expanded our coverage to include the Waterford Lady Wildcats, the #1 team in the state of Ohio for Division IV. And this season seems to have the Wildcats on pace for another chance to claim the state crown. So Waterford reporters Andrew Hartman and Connor Martin are here now. And guys, how have the Waterford Lady Wildcats looked this year?
You know, Sean, after a rough ending to last season, the Lady Wildcats have been on a mission this year. Waterford remains at the top of the TVC Hocking with just a few conference games left.
That's right, Andrew. The Lady Wildcats are still considered the class of Division IV girls basketball in the state of Ohio.
Now these ladies, you know, they're not just beating teams, they are demolishing opponents. Waterford has won 12 of its 15 victories by double-digit margins.
Even with the Lady Wildcats crushing teams by an average of 31 points a game, Coach Close is still not happy with the recent performances. Waterford went 2-1 this week, dropping their first loss of the season to a West Virginia powerhouse in Parkersburg South.
Now, despite the minor hiccup, there's still no need to hit that panic button. The Lady Wildcats have played solid, fundamental, unselfish basketball all season long, putting them in position for another state title run.
Stealing a line from DJ Khalid, a major key to success for this team is Danny Dreher. She understands that to get a win, it takes a total team effort, and told us she enjoys getting her teammates involved on offense.
That's right, Dreher and the rest of the squad, they really seem to pass up good shots for great shots, creating easy scoring opportunities on offense.
We'll have to see if they can keep up their success next Monday night at home against Eastern.
Looking forward to see if they can end the season as well as they started. Thanks, guys. If you're a Browns fan like me, you can only look at mock drafts for so long before getting sad. When I need a break, though, I head over to woub.org/heroes for all the latest Southeastern Ohio news. Every night, our reporters are at games all over the area, and we'll have written recaps as well as the video recaps for every single one. Plus, you can find full past episodes and other stories important to you and your communities. Last week, neither the men nor the Lady Tomcats were able to record a victory, so now I'm joined by Trimble reporter Duncan Goldberg. And was this week any different?
Well, Sean, it turned out to be a pretty solid week for those two teams out in Gloucester. Now, the Lady Tomcats did have a tough start to their week as they lost to Belpre 67-57. Belpre matched up perfectly with Trimble as they were able to break down Coach Richard's normally dominant press with extremely talented guard play.
Well, you know, the last couple games, I think we've caused maybe 25, 30 turnovers, and that's been a big part of our game. And tonight, like you said, you know, that's why we switched to an 11 press, just to kind of slow them down a little bit, not necessarily make turnovers, because they have some good guard play.
The guard play wasn't just fantastic for the Lady Golden Eagles, but so was their shooting. They were dialing it up from long distance. All I can say is they were making that hotline bling. But you know, Lady Tomcats got right back on track on Thursday as they beat South Gallia 48-35. The score doesn't indicate how dominant the Lady Tomcats actually were in their win over the Lady Rebels. With 6 minutes left in the game, Coach Richard pulled his starters, and at this point, the Lady Tomcats were up 42-12. It was a fantastic all-around game for those girls. In Trimble's first game against Lady Rebels, the South Gallia was able to hang around until the end. So what this game really shows is how far Coach Richards has truly taken this Lady Tomcat team.
He's obviously done some really great things with the girls, turning that program around, and Howie Caldwell's done a good job with the boys, too.
Yeah, I mean, those boys have done extremely well under Coach Caldwell these first 2 years, but how do you lose when you have players like Bryce Guthrie and Justice Jenkins? The Trimble boys were able to flat out dominate this week as they beat Miller 74-51. This was a kind of a surprise, though, as the only
only beat the Falcons by 6 points in their first meeting. In their second game this week, the Tomcats beat the Eastern Eagles 68-53 on homecoming night. Just like the girls' game against South Gallia, the score really didn't indicate how badly the Tomcats beat the Eagles. Going into the fourth quarter, the Tomcats had a comfortable 31-point lead, so Coach Caldwell decided to give his boys a little rest and pull his starters. It was a pretty good bounce-back week for those Tomcats after that upset loss at Wahama. With Justice Jenkins and Bryce Guthrie now rolling, it'll be fun to see what those two can do for the Tomcats going down the stretch.
Looking to see how they can finish off their season. Thanks, Duncan. Before we reveal our Heroes of the Week, let's update you on the conference standings as of Friday night. For the Ohio boys, 3 teams have 6 conference wins, with the Vinton County Vikings leading the way with only 1 loss. Now, moving it over to the Hocking, we are going to switch it over, and Trimble, they're still in first at 9-1, but South Gallia right behind them. Eastern moving their way up the standings. The Federal Hockings bringing up the rear at 2-9. Now switching it over to the girls in the Hocking, Waterford may have lost to Parkersburg South, but remain unbeaten in conference play at 13-0. The Eastern Lady Eagles are right behind, though, with only 2 conference losses. And taking it back to the Ohio, 3 teams each have 2 losses. NY, Vinton County, and Alexander all battling for that conference title. And the Lady Bulldogs will be happy to put this disappointing season behind them. They're only 1 spot above last place. All right, it is finally Hero of the Week time. So Danny and Josh are back to give us their picks. I know you two loved all of the fan contribution on Twitter this week and took it into consideration. So Danny, how about you start us off?
Yeah, thank you to everyone who tweeted at us or the Hardwood account to voice their Hero of the Week opinions. But I have to say, my girls' pick was a no-brainer. Straight out of Athens, I am crowning Lexi McCollum as the girls' Hero of the Week. This chick was the embodiment of a hero on the court and her attitude off the court. The Lady Bulldogs are making a turnaround after they had that win streak, and she is leading the pack. In back-to-back games, Lexi collectively scored 22 points and grabbed 10 boards. 13 of those points were against Meigs. And on defense, she has no fear. No matter who she's defending, Lexi plays in your face and scrappy, as when we saw when she snagged 5 steals from River Valley. But the biggest reason Lexi is the Hero of the Week is because she took initiative and turned the Lady Bulldogs around. She told our reporters, quote, "I want to run the team. I'm the leader. I want to take control."
Well, after the week the Lady Bulldogs had, I don't doubt her in the slightest, but another player who consistently takes control on the court, and that is Trimble's Bryce Guthrie. He's the centerpiece for the top team in the TVC Hocking, and that is why here's our Boys Hero of the Week. No surprise here either, Danny. This senior athlete is the size for the Tomcat and usually dictates the team's offense, especially under the hoop. Assistant coach Chris Lyons said, if Guthrie doesn't get boards, Trimble doesn't get rebounds. And in their win over Eastern on Friday, 68-53 win, Guthrie played true to these words. He outscored Eastern's entire team with 20 points and 7 rebounds in the first half alone, completely dominating Eastern's playmaker and former Hero of the Week, Dylan Swatzel. This guy also goes to all the girls' games, goofy on the sidelines, and the girls go as far as saying he is their halftime entertainment. Guthrie is a guy who is an all-around team player and has a strong sense of school pride, whether he's on or off the court.
Yeah, definitely a guy we love here at Hardwood, but not exactly the 2 players you had in mind, Sean. Good try, though.
Yeah, 0 for 2 this week, but, you know, there were a lot of heroic performances from both of those guys nonetheless. So the clock has hit all zeros on show number 4, excuse me. We're halfway through the season, but there's a lot more action, including the tournament. Remember to go over to our website to check those playoff seedings. And until then, I'm your host, Sean Neidig, reminding you, be heroic.